Let's do something fun because there's a lot of people that are not happy right now. Some people aren't happy with me, and it's funny because I've had people ask me about how I take it, and I say, well, I've always said this: when the Bruins do well, um, I'm the face on YouTube that they're going to be seeing talking about it, and they know I'm a Bruins fan. The funny thing is, there's these big kind of Kinder Egg things that they had at Superstore. They were 44 cents each. Yvonne got me three of them this week because they were 44 cents each. All three of them contain Stanley Cup championship banners, and they're all Boston Bruins. I was like, oh, Boston, that's kind of fun. And I put it together, and I was like, oh, another Boston. And then I opened the third, and I'm like, it's Boston. And I said to her, I said, either this is a jinx or it's a good sign. If they win, it's a good sign. If they lose, it's a jinx. Um, so I wanted to talk about all 31 teams because here's the thing. Part of the reason this channel works, part of the reason that I can upload videos 365 days a year is I just like hockey. It really is that basic. I don't view it just purely through a fanboy eyes. I just like hockey, and that's why I can cheer for more than one team. That's why in any given game, there is a team I'm cheering for that I could put a jersey on, sit in that crowd, and you would go, oh, Shannon's a fan of that team. I didn't know. Um, that's just the way that I watch it. If I don't care about either team, I don't watch. The most recent example would be the 2010 Stanley Cup final between Philadelphia and Chicago. I remember that final came up and I went, oh, well, good. I don't need to watch hockey. I didn't watch a minute of that Stanley Cup final. I didn't care. I was like, I don't really care. Chicago had knocked off Vancouver. Philadelphia had come back from a 3-0 down against Boston and won that one in seven. I didn't care who won at all. Period. And I would barely even pay attention to the highlights after. I was doing other things. Couldn't care less. Literally could not care less than that year. So for people who are like, oh, that's Shannon, he's a fan of multiple teams. Yeah, it's part of the reason this channel works. And now with this channel in entering year four, yeah, if Chicago and Philly met in the playoffs now, I would absolutely have a team I'd be cheering for. So with that set, that backdrop set, these are all 31 teams on the board, and I've got Seattle with a question mark because we don't know what they're going to be called. We don't know what their logo is going to be. I don't have magnets made up for Seattle, which is sad because I don't have anything to use for them. I guess I could just get like a Kraken decal or decal. But I could get a Kraken decal and just throw it on there, or Black and Decker or whatever. Kraken decal and Black and Decker. Anyway, um, let's talk about my fandom of all 31 teams and whether it was positively or negatively impacted by this season. Anaheim, positively affected. A lot of young kids coming in. John Gibson, it's hard not to pull for him. Really, really liked what they did with those 25th anniversary jerseys. That was a sly trick by them to come up with what is probably the best third jersey of the year. And just in general, I like the organization and I like what they're doing. So the Anaheim Ducks, who I hated more than any team in history years ago when this channel started, now, nope. Arizona, absolutely. I'm rooting for Arizona because there are so many people who come out and go, move them. Move them. Nobody sports them, move them. No. I'm not in that camp anymore. I may have been in that camp a few years ago. I'm not in that camp anymore. And the inspiring almost playoffs for this season, I'm hoping leads to something better next year. Boston, it's been improved. I've kind of come to the realization today, and it may be because it's the playoffs, but like, am I more a Bruins fan now than a Canucks fan? Am I at that level where in almost any scenario those two teams meet each other and I'd be cheering for the Bruins? Are we at that level? I don't think so. But again, it's closer than it was, and for Boston, I'm just so proud of them for what they did these playoffs. And regardless of what happens in the finals, I don't care if they win or lose. To be honest, just them being here is fantastic. Buffalo, neither positive nor negative. You could get positives from Dahlin's rookie season being fantastic. For me, the negative would be the continued upheaval and uncertainty and the mediocrity that exists, and not really knowing. I don't know. There's a lot of things with Buffalo that I haven't really been positively impacted in my fandom of them. Calgary. You know what? I used to hate Calgary more than anybody else. Back in the late '80s, early '90s, yeah, it was Calgary. I hated the Flames. But it's not a thing anymore. I actually found myself out of the first round when they came up short in 5 games against Colorado, saying, "Man, this sucks for Calgary. This is rough. That sucks for them." Hopefully they come back next year. And I'm a huge David Riddick fan. I know Riddick wasn't great the second half of the year, but I like David Riddick. So for me, Calgary's moved up. Carolina, the whole bunch of jerks thing, the surge, the all of it. How can I not be rooting for them next year to do something big? What do you follow it up with? I would love to see a Stanley Cup go to Carolina because it would make so many people angry. I think it would be a reward to everybody. Points out how the crowd's full now because they're winning. Well, what about that really passionate fan base that didn't leave? What about that core audience? Yeah, it's smaller, but what about that core audience that was still going out and supporting the team when they sucked? So for those fans, yeah, it would be kind of nice to see them get something because they'll still be there when the team's good. Chicago, neither positive nor negative this year. Yes, I was salty against the Blackhawks after the 3 Stanley Cup wins in 6 years. Yes, I was a salty Canuck fan when Daniel Sedin got taken out by Duncan Keith. Um, at this stage, I don't consider myself to be cheering for or against Chicago. We'll see what happens next year. I have a funny feeling that I'll be really kind of jacked about some of their defensive prospects coming in and really enjoy some of that, but we'll see. It wasn't positive or negative for me this year. Colorado, positive, definitely. What a run. What a great season start and finish for them. And we'll see whether or not they can improve that lag they had in the middle of their schedule next year. Columbus, I find myself really rooting for Columbus because everybody's leaving. Because of the fact that there is a perception that Columbus is going down, Columbus is done, this was it, the 3rd year, that's it, they're finished. I don't want to see that happen, so I'm really kind of pulling for them to make the right personnel decisions this summer and actually have a big year next year. Dallas, neither positively or negatively impacted because I already cheered for Dallas a lot, and yeah, we'll see what they do next year. Detroit, definite positive with Detroit. I like their young kids a lot. I like this team. I have overestimated this team at times, but they still finished right around where I thought they would. They just had a really, really crappy stretch before they got there. I like Detroit, and I think they're on the right track. And with Steve Yzerman, it could accelerate things. Edmonton, Florida, LA, Minnesota, Montreal, none of them positive or negative. Montreal, I thought about the positives, but it's still that whole Montreal thing, so it's gonna take a while. Nashville, I like some things going on with Nashville. There are other things with Nashville that they're not as high up as they were a couple years ago in terms of my favorite teams. New Jersey, they're about the same. Really not a positive or a negative with them. Positive for the Islanders, you had Barry Trotz, you had Lou Lamoriello. You get a hardworking team on the ice that's not necessarily the most talented, but the most determined. I will probably like that team. Sometimes the jersey does make a difference. Rangers, neither positive or negative. The only down arrow on the board is Ottawa. It is getting harder and harder for me to say, oh, Ottawa's my yeah. If I have to put a hierarchy up here, Ottawa's number 4. I like the kids, but the Melnick thing makes it really, really difficult for me to cheer for Ottawa. It makes it very, very difficult. Not gonna lie. It is getting harder, and I can't imagine for fans in the Ottawa area if that's the only team you cheer for and that's your lifeblood, that's your team. I can't imagine how rough it's got to be over the last couple of years after how close they got or appeared to get in 2017 compared to where they're at now. So this summer will go a long way towards deciding whether or not they stay in 4th the next time I do a 1 through 31 countdown, or if they dive by a couple of spots. and there may be some surprising teams that would jump up. Philly didn't move one way or the other. Pittsburgh didn't move one way or the other. St. Louis, not really influenced. I thought about it, and I thought, no, I didn't really end up being more of a Blues fan this year than last year. But San Jose, they added Erik Karlsson. Adding Erik Karlsson, that's just the way it works. So even though there's a lot of guys on this team that I have had issues with in the past, and the team in general, I disliked greatly when this channel started up, 3 years ago. They definitely move up this year, and again with Karlsson, I don't know. I know there's people that don't like him. I do. I think he's fantastic, and I think the way that he was treated on his way out of Ottawa is wrong. I think he was treated harshly. I think, and this is part of why Ottawa drops for me, is the way they treat guys when they're leaving town. I don't like it. I think it's unprofessional, and it has to leave guys who are looking at where they're going to go as unrestricted free agents. It has to leave them going, I don't know if I want to be here. Look at the way they treated Karlsson on the way out the door. Look at Hoffman. He was just gone. Look at Stone and Duchesne. They wanted money, so they traded him. These guys were willing to stay, and they just moved him because they wanted more money. So, it definitely affects. The Erik Karlsson deal affected how I saw both teams. Tampa, neither positive nor negative. Toronto, I don't hate Toronto as much as people think I do. I don't hate them at all. And I genuinely still believe, and I know people may not believe this, I genuinely still believe this team with Austin Matthews, Freddie Anderson, and the rest of the cast of John Tavares and everything, if they can figure out that blue line and add a little bit more sandpaper in their bottom six, they absolutely can and will win a Stanley Cup. But I think they're closer than some people give them credit for. I don't think they're going to be a dynasty or anything, as some Leaf fans really, really hoped last summer when they signed Tavares. But I don't think they're as dead as some see them either. Cap hell? Absolutely. Brendan Shanahan admitted that himself when he was on Tim and Sid earlier in the week, after signing his 6-year extension. So they understand the situation that they're in, but again, it doesn't make me view them negatively. And this is where things have kind of changed for me. Toronto faces Boston in the playoffs. I don't come out of that feeling bad about Toronto. And I know people are going to say, well, it's because Boston didn't beat them, or Boston beat them. If Boston did not beat them, I would not have a more negative view of Toronto. I really thought coming out of Game 5 that Toronto was finally going to beat Boston. And I even said to Yvonne, I said it would be nice if Toronto finally got over Boston, because I hate seeing how the media treats that team after they lose the series. So if they actually beat Boston, that would be a great storyline. Nobody's going to believe I said that. Vancouver, not negatively or positively impacted over the last year. I know people are going to say, well, what about Pettersson? What about him? These guys were already my favorite team. Can't go, they're more favorite. So, the only reason I got Boston with an up arrow is because they were number 2. And it kind of feels like, it gets tough sometimes. Vegas, neither positive nor negative. I've been very, very fortunate with this channel and my interaction with fans from Vegas. 2 trips to Vegas. It's going to be 3 as of August. And I love Vegas. It's a great city with some great fans. And I have no doubt that when the day comes that they're not as great a team as they've been over the last 2 years, will attendance drop? It drops everywhere when a team isn't that great. But I do think that they're a good, stable franchise with a lot of fans that are going to support this team for many years to come. Capitals, neither positive nor negative for them. And Jets move up. It definitely makes a difference that Yvonne's really, that's her favorite team. Behind the Canucks. The Canucks are her favorite, and then the Jets. So it's hard not to kind of root for them. And again, there's that Canadian aspect, and people point out, well, in terms of the team with the most actual Canadians on it, Canadian teams aren't usually at the top, which is true for the most part. But I still, I find myself hoping that someday some Canadian team wins the Stanley Cup. And Winnipeg's the one that it would be really nice for the city, for the organization, for everything that city went through when they lost the Jets the first time. It would be great to see them win a championship. But to this point, hasn't happened. And Seattle, I don't have an idea of how I'm going to feel about Seattle. I know I'm excited about Seattle. I know that I'm excited to see what logo they're going to pick and their color scheme and how that's going to work. And whether or not these guys are smarter than the NHL was with Vegas. The team's name came out too late. The jerseys came out too late. All the merch came out way too late. Have the Seattle stuff out there about a year in advance so that when Seattle has its opening night, the whole crowd is filled with people wearing Seattle merch. It was weird with Vegas that you saw a lot of road jerseys, like jerseys for the road team at the start of their first season, and there were barely any Vegas jerseys because they just weren't available early enough. So maybe they'll learn from that mistake with Seattle. And I don't know. Like I've heard people say, well, you're going to cheer for Seattle. On some level, yeah. This is a 4 or 5 hour drive from here, depending on traffic. And it'd be kind of fun to have a natural rival here. But because they're going to be rivals with the Canucks, I don't know. I haven't seen the roster. I haven't seen the coach. I haven't seen the GM. I have no idea. This is just a nebulous idea right now. So we'll see. Anyways, there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I will close with this. I have had a lot of people over the last 3 years tell me, Shannon, before your channel, I cheered for more than one team, but I didn't feel like I was allowed to. And since your channel grew and since you started things up and showed that you were a fan of 3 different teams, that being Boston, Dallas, Vancouver, I feel more comfortable being a fan of more than one team and admitting it and buying merchandise from more than one team. So I'm glad I can do that for people. And for people who don't understand it, the best way to put it is I don't see it as this tribal war. I don't view every game as like this is the most important night of my life. Like a game 7 is stressful. I get stressed during game 7s with Boston, but if they lose, it's not the end of the world. And I don't view any team that plays against my team as an enemy. Montreal's the only exception because they've just beaten Boston too much. Chicago with Vancouver, it's kind of the same thing. Chicago, you go back over the decades, they've beaten Vancouver out of the playoffs too much for my liking. Dallas, that was the case with Detroit as well. And when they went to the Stanley Cup final in 99 and won it, it wasn't just a matter of a foot in the crease that I heard a lot about. It was, well, this isn't really a big deal because you didn't have to play Detroit. Dallas can't beat Detroit. So, there you go. Let me know your thoughts as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Now I'm done for the day until tonight's game. So I'm just going to relax. I'm all caught up on Flash. Bizarre ending. I don't understand the Flash in that he always makes everything worse and he never wins. It just doesn't happen. I don't understand it. Anyways, there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for all your support, and I'll talk to you again soon.